What if the history we've been taught is missing crucial pieces deliberately erased because they revealed truths too dangerous to share? Picture a hidden library, its shelves lined with forbidden scrolls and crumbling tablets, each one containing myths and legends that were suppressed, censored, or outright banned by those in power. These aren't just stories. They're fragments of a reality that was deemed too unsettling, too revolutionary, or too revealing to let survive. Today, we're stepping into the shadows to uncover 28 forbidden myths that were buried for exposing truths humanity wasn't supposed to know. From ancient civilizations with knowledge that rivaled modern science to prophecies that predicted events with eerie accuracy, these myths weren't just forgotten, they were silenced. Think about the stories you grew up hearing, the ones in textbooks, the tales passed down through generations. Now imagine discovering that some of the most profound narratives were deliberately left out, their absence shaping our understanding of the world in ways we never realized. Why would a myth be banned? What could it contain that was so threatening? The answer lies in power. Knowledge is control, and when a story challenges the dominant narrative, it becomes a target. These forbidden myths reveal lost technologies, forgotten histories, and even insights into human potential that defy conventional explanation. They hint at a past far more advanced and far more mysterious than we've been led to believe. This journey isn't just about uncovering hidden stories. It's about questioning the very foundations of what we think we know. As we explore these 28 suppressed myths, you'll start to see patterns, echoes of truths that resonate across cultures and centuries, all pointing to a reality that's been carefully edited. By the time we reach the end, you might find yourself wondering, if these myths were banned for revealing too much, what else is still out there, waiting to be rediscovered? The answers are closer than you think, and the adventure begins now. The first forbidden myth takes us to the smoldering ruins of the Library of Alexandria, a place where the boundaries between legend and history blur. Imagine a vault so vast it held over 500,000 scrolls, works on astronomy that mapped the stars with precision we wouldn't match for centuries, medical texts describing surgeries we've only recently rediscovered, and philosophical treatises questioning the nature of reality itself. This wasn't just a library, it was the beating heart of human knowledge. But here's the unsettling truth. Its destruction wasn't some tragic accident of war. Evidence suggests it was targeted. Its contents burned precisely because they revealed ideas too dangerous for the powers of the time. Consider the accounts of ancient scholars who described texts within the library that contradicted official narratives, stories of civilizations predating recorded history, technologies that harnessed energy in ways we still don't fully understand, even maps of lands supposedly undiscovered at the time. These weren't just books, they were keys to a different understanding of humanity's past, and when the flames consumed them, an entire dimension of knowledge vanished overnight. Some historians argue the library's destruction marked the beginning of a dark age, a deliberate narrowing of human thought. But fragments survived. Whispers of the library's forbidden knowledge surface in surprising places, an obscure manuscript referencing a lost treatise on flight, a medieval alchemist's cryptic notes about Alexandrian experiments with light and energy. Even today, archaeologists uncover clues suggesting the library's true holdings were far more radical than mainstream history admits. What if its burning wasn't just the loss of ancient wisdom, but the intentional silencing of truths that could have reshaped the world centuries earlier? That's the real mystery here, not just what was lost, but why someone needed it gone. From the ashes of Alexandria's lost wisdom, we turn to another enigma shrouded in mystery, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Unlike the library's scattered fragments, these texts weren't just destroyed. They were hunted, deliberately erased from history by rulers and religious authorities who feared their power. Legend claims the tablets were inscribed on indestructible emerald green material, their words revealing the secrets of alchemy, the keys to eternal life, and even the ability to traverse dimensions. But here's what's chilling. Multiple cultures separated by oceans and centuries spoke of these same tablets, each adding eerie details that defy coincidence. Take the accounts of ancient Egyptian priests who whispered of Thoth, the god of wisdom, descending from the stars to gift humanity with knowledge too advanced for its time. His teachings, etched into the tablets, allegedly included instructions for turning base metals into gold, not just as a physical transformation, but as a metaphor for spiritual enlightenment. Medieval alchemists like Hermes Trismegistus later referenced the tablets in coded manuscripts, hinting that their secrets could unlock the very fabric of reality. But whenever these references surfaced, they were systematically suppressed. The Roman Empire banned their study, the Church burned any copies they found, and even today, scholars who dig too deep into their origins face strange resistance. What could be so dangerous about a set of ancient texts? Consider this. In the 1940s, a controversial archaeologist claimed to have found a fragment of the tablets in South America, inscribed with symbols matching descriptions from Egyptian lore. The artifact allegedly detailed a device capable of manipulating gravity technology that wouldn't be theorized by modern science for decades. Within weeks of the discovery, the artifact vanished and the archaeologist's notes were seized. Coincidence, or proof that the tablet's knowledge was actively suppressed because it threatened to rewrite history and science as we know it? The most haunting question isn't whether the Emerald Tablets existed, but why their contents provoked such extreme measures across millennia. Were they truly a guide to powers beyond human understanding, or did they simply reveal truths about our potential that certain forces didn't want us to remember? Either way, their legacy lingers in the shadows, a ghost of forbidden knowledge that refuses to stay buried. The Gnostic Gospels stand as one of history's most glaring examples of forbidden knowledge, entire scriptures ripped from the biblical canon, their pages burned, their teachings erased. But why? Because they dared to suggest something revolutionary. That divinity wasn't locked behind the gates of institutions, but accessible to anyone willing to seek it. These texts, discovered in fragments in places like Nag Hammadi, Egypt, describe a spiritual path so personal, so direct, it bypassed priests, rituals, and even the church itself. Imagine a version of Christianity where enlightenment wasn't handed down through layers of hierarchy, but found within, through self-discovery and divine connection. That was the threat. One of the most explosive revelations in these banned texts is the concept of the divine spark, the idea that every human carries a fragment of the divine within them, waiting to be awakened. The Gospel of Thomas, for instance, quotes Jesus saying, "The kingdom of God is inside you and all around you." This wasn't just a poetic metaphor, it was a direct challenge to the authority of religious gatekeepers. If people could access God on their own, what need was there for intermediaries? Church leaders saw this as dangerous, a heresy that could unravel the very fabric of organized faith. So they did what power structures often do, they silenced it. But the suppression wasn't just about control, it was about ideology. The Gnostic Gospels painted a cosmos far stranger than the tidy universe of mainstream doctrine. They spoke of a flawed creator, a distant true God, and a spiritual journey through layers of reality. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene, another banned text, even suggests she was privy to teachings Jesus kept hidden from the other disciples, a notion that upended traditional hierarchies. When these texts resurfaced in the 20th century, they didn't just challenge religious history, they forced a reckoning with how much had been lost and why. What's fascinating is how these ideas echo beyond religion. The Gnostics' emphasis on inner knowledge mirrors ancient philosophies and even modern psychology's focus on self-realization. Were they onto something universal? The fact that their teachings were so violently erased hints at a truth too potent to ignore. That spirituality, in its purest form, might be a personal revolution, one that doesn't require permission. And that's precisely why someone wanted it buried. Now, consider this. If the Gnostic Gospels were banned for empowering individuals, what does that say about the other myths we've been told are forbidden? The pattern is clear: when knowledge liberates, it becomes dangerous. And as we peel back these layers, the next myth waiting in the shadows only deepens the mystery. Among the most perplexing artifacts of forbidden knowledge lies a book that has defied understanding for centuries: the Voynich Manuscript. Its pages, filled with an undecipherable script and surreal illustrations of plants that don't match any known species, celestial maps of unidentifiable constellations, and cryptic diagrams of what might be biological or alchemical processes, have baffled linguists, cryptographers, and historians alike. Unlike other suppressed texts, this one wasn't banned by authority. It was hidden in plain sight, its content so impenetrable that even the most determined minds couldn't crack its code. But here's the unsettling question: was its language designed to be unreadable, or does it guard secrets so revolutionary that decoding it could rewrite history? The manuscript first surfaced in the court of Emperor Rudolf II of Bohemia in the early 17th century, where it was purchased for a staggering sum equivalent to thousands of dollars today. From the start, it was treated as something extraordinary, yet no one could explain its origins or purpose. Carbon dating places its creation between 1400 and 1430, but its author remains anonymous, its language unmatched by any known alphabet. Some theories suggest it's an elaborate hoax, but the complexity of its script and the consistency of its symbols across 240 pages make that unlikely. Others propose it's a lost language or an advanced cipher meant to protect forbidden knowledge. What makes the Voynich Manuscript truly unsettling are its illustrations. Detailed drawings of plants with no earthly counterparts hint at either an undiscovered botanical tradition or something far stranger, perhaps a guide to flora from another world or a symbolic representation of alchemical processes. The astronomical sections depict celestial arrangements that don't align with any known historical star charts, suggesting either an advanced understanding of the cosmos or a deliberate obfuscation of real locations. Even more intriguing are the human figures in its pages, often depicted interacting with strange, tube-like structures or submerged in liquids, as if illustrating medical or proto-scientific experiments far ahead of their time. The most compelling clue to its suppression lies in who sought to own it. Beyond Emperor Rudolf, the manuscript passed through the hands of occultists, Jesuit scholars, and even the Vatican's secret archives. Each owner guarded it fiercely, yet none could decode it. In the 1940s, codebreakers who had cracked Nazi ciphers during World War II turned their skills to the Voynich and failed. Modern artificial intelligence has analyzed its patterns, only to conclude that its structure doesn't match any known language or cipher. This raises a chilling possibility. What if the manuscript wasn't meant to be read by just anyone? What if it was designed to reveal its secrets only to those with a key or a specific kind of knowledge? The true scandal of the Voynich Manuscript isn't just that it resists decoding, but that its very existence suggests a gap in our understanding of history. If it's a medical text, as some believe, does it contain cures or procedures lost to time? If it's an astronomical guide, does it point to forgotten celestial events or navigation techniques? Or is it something else entirely, a manual for technologies or spiritual practices deemed too dangerous to preserve in plain language? The fact that it survives at all, while so many other forbidden texts were destroyed, hints that someone, somewhere, believed its secrets were worth protecting. And that alone makes it one of history's most tantalizing mysteries. What if an entire civilization, one with towering spires, vast cities, and technology rivaling our own, was scrubbed from history? Enter Tartaria, a name that echoes through obscure manuscripts and whispers among alternative historians. According to fringe scholars, this wasn't just another empire lost to time. It was deliberately erased, its achievements reassigned to other cultures, its very existence dismissed as fantasy. But the evidence, though scattered, is startling. Across Europe and Asia, architectural wonders like the Kremlin's sprawling towers or the intricate star forts of Italy bear designs so advanced for their supposed eras that some argue they couldn't have been built with the tools of the time. Maps from the Middle Ages label vast regions as Tartaria, depicting a sophisticated network of cities and trade routes. Yet modern textbooks treat it as a cartographic error. The most compelling case for Tartaria's suppression lies in the anomalies. Take the so-called mud flood theory, which suggests that many of the world's grandest buildings were partially buried by a catastrophic event, their lower floors submerged under layers of earth. Photographs from the 19th century show structures like the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg with ground-level windows half buried, as if the city had sunk overnight. Official history chalks this up to urban renovations or poor drainage, but Tartaria researchers propose something far more radical, that these were relics of an older, global civilization, later repurposed by new rulers who rewrote history to claim them as their own. Why would such a civilization be erased? The answer might lie in power specifically, the need to legitimize emerging nations. If Tartaria truly spanned continents with advanced infrastructure, its existence would undermine the narratives of later empires that claimed to be pioneers of progress. The Romanovs, the Habsburgs, even the British Empire all stood to gain by portraying themselves as the architects of modernity, not inheritors of a forgotten world. And then there's the technology. Accounts from the 18th century describe free energy devices and wireless communication towers attributed to Tartarian engineers, ideas so ahead of their time they threatened the industrial and economic systems taking hold. The most haunting question isn't whether Tartaria existed, but how many other truths have been buried beneath the weight of rewritten history. If even a fraction of these claims hold water, it suggests a pattern far darker than mere oversight, a systematic effort to control humanity's understanding of its own past. And if that's the case, what else might be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to piece together the fragments? The next suppressed myth takes us even deeper into the shadows, where the lines between history and heresy blur beyond recognition. Buried in the basement of the National Museum of Iraq lies an artifact that shouldn't exist: a small clay jar, roughly the size of a fist, with a copper cylinder and iron rod nestled inside. Discovered in the ruins of a 2,000-year-old Parthian village near Baghdad, this unassuming object has sparked one of archaeology's most heated debates. When filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, it functions exactly like a modern battery, capable of producing a small electrical charge. The implications are staggering. If this was indeed its purpose, it means ancient civilizations not only understood electricity, but harnessed it centuries before Galvani and Volta supposedly discovered the phenomenon in the 1700s. Mainstream archaeology dismisses the Baghdad Battery as a curiosity, labeling it a storage vessel for sacred scrolls or an ornamental piece, but the details defy simple explanations. The jar's design, a copper cylinder sealed with asphalt to prevent contact with the iron rod except through an electrolytic solution, matches the basic principles of a galvanic cell. Replicas built to its specifications have consistently generated between 1 and 2 volts of electricity. Ancient Mesopotamian texts describe medical treatments involving electric fish to numb pain, suggesting they recognized the effects of electrical current. Even more intriguing are the accounts of golden artifacts from the same era, plated with astonishing precision, a process that today requires electroplating. Could these craftsmen have been using primitive batteries to achieve their work? The resistance to this idea reveals a deeper bias in how we view ancient innovation. Accepting that electricity was understood 2 millennia ago would append the linear narrative of human progress, the comforting story where each breakthrough builds neatly on the last. Instead, it hints at a messier, more fascinating truth that knowledge can be lost, rediscovered, and suppressed in cycles. Consider this: when German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig first proposed the battery theory in the 1930s, his peers ridiculed him. Later, during World War II, the artifact was moved to a secure location, away from public scrutiny. Coincidence, or a sign that challenging established timelines is discouraged? What makes the Baghdad Battery truly forbidden isn't just its existence, but what it implies about the fragility of history. If one overlooked artifact can hint at forgotten technologies, how many other breakthroughs have been buried, dismissed, or deliberately ignored? The next forbidden myth plunges us into an even darker corner of suppressed knowledge, where the boundaries between science and the supernatural blur beyond recognition. Among the most baffling relics of ancient cartography lies a document that defies time itself, the Pirry Rise Map. Drawn on gazelle skin in 1513 by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Pirry Rise, this fragmented world chart doesn't just depict known coastlines with eerie precision. It shows Antarctica's landmass free of ice, a detail impossible for its era. Modern seismic surveys confirm the map's contours match the continent's hidden topography beneath miles of glacial cover. The implications are staggering. How could a 16th century navigator possess knowledge of a land buried under ice for millions of years? The map's own inscriptions hint at a disturbing answer. Pirry Rise notes that his work synthesized 20 older source maps, some dating back to the 4th century before Christ, including materials from the Library of Alexandria. These lost references allegedly included charts from the time of Alexander, depicting lands beyond the known world. Even more unsettling, the map's rendering of South America's coastline includes geographical features like the Andes Mountains, details European explorers wouldn't document for decades. The only way such accuracy makes sense is if the mapmakers had access to aerial surveys or advanced mathematical cartography, technologies supposedly non-existent in antiquity. Skeptics argue the map's Antarctic details are coincidental, mistranslated, or later additions, but the evidence resists dismissal. The projection used, a sophisticated azimuthal equidistant technique, wasn't formally developed until the 20th century. The map also accurately places the Amazon River's double delta system, a feature invisible from ground level and only confirmed by satellite imagery in the 1960s. When historian Charles Hapgood presented these findings to the U.S. Air Force in the 1960s, their cartographic experts confirmed the map's precision was unexplainable by any known means of the period. The real controversy lies in what the map suggests about human history. If Pirry Rise worked from ancient sources depicting Antarctica ice-free, those sources must originate from a time when the continent was habitable roughly 12,000 years ago during the last glacial melt. This aligns with Plato's accounts of Atlantis and other flood myths describing cataclysmic civilization collapses. Could the map be a surviving fragment of a lost global culture's knowledge, preserved through centuries of copying and rediscovery? The fact that it was found tucked in the Ottoman archives, nearly forgotten until 1929, raises another chilling possibility: that such maps were deliberately hidden because they contradicted the official narratives of their time. What makes the Pirry Rise Map truly forbidden isn't just its accuracy, but the questions it forces us to confront. If advanced cartography existed in prehistory, who were its practitioners, and why does mainstream history dismiss their legacy as impossible? The answers might lie in the next myth, one that takes us from the frozen south to a desert wasteland hiding secrets far older than the pyramids. Deep in the remote cliffs of Mali, the Dogon people have preserved a secret that shatters conventional history. Their ancestors knew about Sirius B, the invisible companion star to Sirius, centuries before modern astronomy confirmed its existence. Without telescopes, written records, or contact with the outside world, their oral traditions described Sirius B as a tiny, dense star made of a metal heavier than iron, orbiting its brighter counterpart every 50 years. These details match modern astrophysics with chilling accuracy. But here's what's truly unsettling. Sirius B is a white dwarf, a star so faint it wasn't photographed until 1970. So how could a tribe isolated for millennia possess knowledge that required 20th century technology to verify? The Dogon's answer is etched into their rituals and carvings. They claim this wisdom came from the Nommo, amphibious beings who descended from the Sirius system in a spinning vessel amid fire and thunder. According to their elders, the Nommo shared advanced astronomical knowledge, including the existence of a third star in the Sirius system, a hypothetical object astronomers now call Sirius C, but have yet to conclusively detect. Even more perplexing, Dogon cosmology includes detailed descriptions of Saturn's rings and Jupiter's moons, celestial features invisible without magnification. When French anthropologists first recorded these accounts in the 1930s, the scientific community dismissed them as coincidence or contamination from outside sources. But the Dogon's isolation and the specificity of their star lore make these explanations flimsy at best. The real scandal isn't just the accuracy of their knowledge, it's the reaction to it. When researcher Robert Temple published his groundbreaking book, The Sirius Mystery, in the 1970s, linking the Dogon's claims to ancient Sumerian and Egyptian astronomical traditions, academia responded not with curiosity but hostility. Critics argued the tribe must have learned about Sirius B from Western visitors, despite no evidence of such contact before the 20th century. Others accused Temple of embellishing the Dogon stories, even as subsequent anthropologists confirmed the tribe's original accounts. The pattern is telling. Whenever indigenous knowledge challenges the dominant narrative, the default response is to explain it away rather than explore its implications. What if the Dogon's lore isn't just folklore, but a surviving fragment of a far older, global understanding of the cosmos? Ancient Egyptian temple alignments, Mayan codices, and even Greek myths hint at reverence for Sirius, often tying it to gods who brought civilization to humanity. The Dogon themselves say their ancestors migrated from the Nile Valley, carrying this star wisdom with them. If true, their oral traditions might be the last echoes of a lost science, preserved not in libraries but in memory. The question isn't whether extraterrestrials visited Mali, it's why we're so resistant to considering that ancient cultures might have accessed knowledge in ways we've forgotten. This reluctance to take the Dogon seriously reveals a deeper bias, the assumption that technological advancement is linear, that our modern tools are the only path to truth. But history is riddled with anomalies like the Baghdad Battery or the Pirry Rise Map that suggest knowledge can be lost, suppressed, or rediscovered in cycles. The Dogon's cosmic insight forces us to confront an uncomfortable possibility that the past might hold answers we're not yet equipped to understand. And if their forbidden myth is just one thread in a larger tapestry, what other truths might be woven into the shadows of forgotten traditions? The next suppressed legend takes us even further into the unknown, where the line between myth and reality dissolves entirely. Beneath the vermilion walls of Beijing's Forbidden City lies a labyrinth of chambers so tightly guarded, even historians with official clearance describe them as black boxes of history. These are the Imperial archives, a sprawling collection of scrolls, jade tablets, and lacquered manuscripts dating back over 3,000 years. While some documents have been carefully curated for public display, whispers persist that the deepest vaults hold records of technologies and events deemed too destabilizing to reveal. Consider the case of the flying chariot, a device described in Tang Dynasty texts as a mechanical bird capable of carrying passengers hundreds of miles in hours. When a French Jesuit scholar attempted to translate these accounts in the 1700s, his notes were confiscated by imperial censors. Today, requests to examine the original scrolls are routinely denied. The secrecy intensifies with the so-called Dragon's Breath manuscripts, a set of Song Dynasty treatises allegedly describing energy weapons harnessing atmospheric electricity. In 2005, a Taiwanese researcher obtained smuggled photographs of what appeared to be schematic diagrams for a device resembling a Tesla coil, complete with annotations about directing heaven's fire. The images were dismissed as hoaxes, but independent engineers who analyzed them noted the designs followed legitimate principles of resonant frequency. Why would such knowledge be suppressed? The answer may lie in a pattern repeated globally. Technologies that challenge centralized control often vanish into the shadows. Most provocative are the archive's rumored pre-flood records. A 1982 archaeological report briefly mentioned a Shang Dynasty bronze chest containing star charts matching the night sky as it would have appeared 12,000 years ago, a time when mainstream science insists no advanced civilizations existed. The chest vanished into the archives, and the lead researcher was reassigned to a remote province. Similar accounts describe maps showing land bridges where none should be, and genealogies tracing Chinese emperors to the builders before the Great Deluge. What makes these archives uniquely troubling is their potential to rewrite not just China's history, but humanity's. When a delegation of UNESCO archivists petitioned for limited access in 2019, they were told the materials were under digital preservation, a process that's now stretched 5 years with no end in sight. Meanwhile, workers repairing an underground archive corridor in 2021 reported finding a sealed chamber behind a false wall. Within days, the site was closed by military personnel. Whether these archives hold lost technologies, inconvenient histories, or something far stranger, their continued restriction suggests one undeniable truth. Some knowledge remains forbidden not because it's false, but because it's too dangerous to acknowledge. The pattern emerges again, not just in China, but everywhere power seeks to control the narrative. And as we peel back these layers, the next suppressed myth will force us to confront an even more unsettling possibility, that our entire understanding of time itself might be a carefully constructed illusion. The Vatican's secret archives stretch for miles beneath the streets of Rome, a maze of climate-controlled vaults, locked chambers, and underground galleries containing what scholars estimate to be over 50,000 documents never made public. Officially, these restricted texts are classified to protect the Church's historical privacy, but whispers persist that the deepest shelves hold far more than just diplomatic correspondence. Among the rumored treasures are ancient manuscripts describing pre-Christian rituals, star maps annotated with celestial anomalies, and even first-hand accounts of encounters with beings not of this earth. What could be so explosive that access is granted only to handpicked researchers, and even then under strict supervision? Consider the case of the Clement Files, a set of 12th-century scrolls allegedly documenting a papal investigation into a village in medieval France where townspeople claimed to have interacted with sky beings who shared advanced agricultural techniques. When a Belgian historian petitioned to examine these records in 1987, his request was denied on grounds of doctrinal sensitivity. Then there's the infamous Report on the Third Heaven, a 17th-century Jesuit manuscript said to detail an astronomer's observations of floating cities in the night sky, a text so heavily guarded that even high-ranking cardinals require special permission to view it. The Church dismisses these stories as legends, but the pattern of secrecy is hard to ignore. The most tantalizing rumors surround the archive's purported collection of pre-Christian texts, works salvaged from the Library of Alexandria or looted during the Crusades, containing wisdom from pagan mystery schools and lost civilizations. In 2012, an Italian journalist claimed a leaked inventory listed scrolls attributed to the Sibylline oracles, prophetic writings once consulted by Roman emperors, alongside Egyptian papyri describing a catastrophic flood that wiped out an advanced culture. The Vatican denied the report, but the timing was telling. Shortly after, they announced a new digitization project to preserve fragile materials, a project that, 12 years later, has yet to release any of the disputed documents. Why would a religious institution suppress knowledge about extraterrestrials or antediluvian civilizations? The answer may lie in control. If humanity's origins or cosmic neighbors challenge the Church's historical narrative, acknowledging them could undermine centuries of theological authority. But there's another possibility. What if these texts don't just contradict doctrine? What if they confirm parts of it too literally? Apocryphal accounts describe vaults holding objects of unknown manufacture, including metallic tablets inscribed with languages no linguist can decipher. Are these relics of forgotten technologies or something even more unsettling? The Vatican's archives aren't unique in their secrecy, but they're unmatched in scale and longevity. For over 1,000 years, they've curated and censored humanity's most controversial ideas. The real question isn't just what's hidden there, but why we're so willing to accept that some truths remain locked away. As we turn to the next myth, the pattern grows clearer. Whether in Rome, Beijing, or the deserts of Mali, the greatest mysteries aren't lost to time, they're deliberately kept from us. The Sumerian king list isn't just an ancient record, it's a deliberate provocation, a challenge carved into clay that defies everything we think we know about human history. Discovered in the ruins of Nippur and other Mesopotamian cities, this cuneiform tablet lists rulers whose reigns stretch into the tens of thousands of years. The first dynasty alone features kings who supposedly ruled for 28,600 years, with later monarchs reigning for more modest but still impossible periods like 1,200 years. Mainstream scholars dismiss these numbers as symbolic or mythological, but what if we're missing the point? The list's precision is unsettling. It names each ruler, their city, and their exact reign duration, punctuated by phrases like, "Then the flood swept over." This isn't the vague stuff of legend, it reads like a meticulous chronicle. Consider the implications. If these lifespans were purely symbolic, why would the scribes bother with such specific mathematical detail? The list even includes transitions between cities, noting when kingship was carried from one place to another, as if tracking the relocation of a government. Some alternative researchers propose a radical interpretation, that the numbers aren't years as we measure them, but perhaps reflect a different system of timekeeping, like orbital cycles, or even a lost understanding of biological longevity. The ancient Sumerians, after all, credited their knowledge to the Anunnaki, beings who supposedly descended from the heavens to teach humanity civilization. Could the king list be preserving a distorted memory of rulers who weren't entirely human? The real controversy lies in how the list aligns with other global traditions. The biblical patriarchs like Methuselah lived for centuries. Hindu Puranas describe kings reigning for thousands of years. Even Plato's account of Atlantis mentions rulers with lifespans far beyond natural limits. These parallels suggest a shared, buried memory, one that clashes with modern anthropology's timeline. When the Assyriologist Thorkild Jacobson translated the king list in the 1930s, he noted it was likely copied from older sources, some dating back to the 3rd millennium before Christ. That means the Sumerians themselves viewed these extraordinary reigns as historical fact, not fable. What's most telling is how the list changes after the Great Flood. Pre-flood kings rule for absurd durations, but post-flood reigns shrink dramatically, eventually settling into plausible human lifespans. This mirrors genetic studies showing a sharp decline in human longevity around the same period. Coincidence or evidence that something catastrophic, environmental, genetic, or even extraterrestrial altered the very fabric of human existence? The Sumerian king list doesn't just record history, it hints at a forgotten epoch when the rules of life and time were fundamentally different. And that's precisely why it's been relegated to the realm of myth, because accepting its truth would force us to rewrite not just history, but biology itself. The next forbidden myth plunges us into even darker territory, where the boundaries between ancient knowledge and modern secrecy collide in ways that defy explanation. At the bottom of the Aegean Sea, encrusted with 2,000 years of marine growth, lay a corroded lump of bronze that would shatter our understanding of ancient technology. When sponge divers discovered the Antikythera Mechanism in 1901, they assumed it was just another artifact from the sunken Roman ship. But when archaeologists painstakingly cleaned its fragments, they uncovered a labyrinth of interlocking gears, precision-cut dials, and inscriptions detailing celestial movements, all housed in a device no larger than a shoebox. This wasn't just a relic, it was a mechanical masterpiece, a functioning astronomical computer capable of predicting eclipses, tracking the Olympic cycles, and modeling the irregular orbit of the moon. The sophistication of its engineering wouldn't be matched again until the 14th century. So why was this technology lost for over a millennium? The answer might lie in a truth too inconvenient for history's victors to preserve. The mechanism's complexity is staggering even by modern standards. X-ray scans reveal at least 37 meshed bronze gears, including a differential gear, a component previously believed to have been invented in the 16th century for automobiles. Its front face featured a revolving display of the Greek zodiac and Egyptian calendar, while intricate clockwork simulated the erratic motion of planets as seen from Earth. One study even suggests it could calculate the dates of upcoming Olympic Games by factoring in the 53-month Calippic cycle, a celestial rhythm few today could explain without a calculator. This wasn't just a tool for astronomers, It was a tangible manifestation of a scientific worldview that saw the cosmos as an orderly, comprehensible system, a perspective that threatened the superstitions and power structures of later eras. The real mystery isn't how the Greeks built it, but why no similar devices survived. Historical records hint that this wasn't unique. Cicero wrote of a bronze instrument constructed by Archimedes that replicated planetary motions, and Byzantine manuscripts mention celestial spheres gifted to foreign rulers. Yet almost all trace of this technology vanished during the rise of the Roman Empire and the Dark Ages. Coincidence or something darker? Consider the fate of Hypatia, the Alexandrian mathematician murdered by a Christian mob in 415. Her crime, practicing astronomy and mechanics deemed pagan by the newly dominant religious authorities. The pattern is clear: when knowledge challenges dogma, it becomes dangerous. The Antikythera Mechanism may have survived only because it sank before the purges began. What's most unsettling is how thoroughly this loss set humanity back. Without the mechanism's legacy, medieval Europe reinvented astronomy from scratch, wasting centuries on flawed Ptolemaic models. Imagine if its principles had been preserved. Might Galileo have had telescopes and gearwork calculators at his disposal? Could the scientific revolution have begun 1,000 years earlier? The Antikythera Mechanism forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Progress isn't inevitable. Knowledge can disappear not by accident but by design. And that raises a haunting question: what other breakthroughs have been erased, leaving us to stumble blindly toward discoveries our ancestors might have already mastered? The next forbidden myth plunges us into even deeper waters, where the line between ancient wisdom and modern secrecy blurs beyond recognition. The Knights Templar weren't just warriors, they were keepers of a secret so explosive it got them wiped out overnight. Founded in 1118 to protect Christian pilgrims, this elite order quickly amassed unimaginable wealth and influence, only to be suddenly arrested, tortured, and burned at the stake in 1314 on orders from the King of France. But here's what history books gloss over: their real crime wasn't power or pride, it was what they allegedly uncovered beneath Jerusalem's Temple Mount during their early excavations. Rumors persist that the Templars didn't just find gold or relics. They stumbled upon an ancient library containing scrolls that challenged the very foundations of medieval religion and science. Witnesses at their trials described strange rituals where Templars allegedly worshipped a severed head called Baphomet, a detail used to condemn them as heretics. But alternative scholars suggest this was a distortion of something far more profound. Arabic manuscripts from the same era mention the Templars recovering a speaking idol with mechanical inner workings, possibly an ancient automaton or oracular device. Even more intriguing are the accounts from captured knights who spoke of the true cross not as wooden beams, but as a set of copper scrolls inscribed with lost wisdom from Solomon's temple. These artifacts, if they existed, would have contained teachings older than Christianity itself, knowledge that threatened both church and crown. The Templars' sudden rise and fall makes sense only when viewed through this lens. Within 2 centuries, they built Europe's first multinational banking system, pioneered architectural techniques that defied medieval engineering, and maintained a fleet of ships conducting unexplained voyages to the Americas long before Columbus. Their signature Gothic cathedrals, like Chartres, are riddled with astronomical alignments and pagan symbolism, suggesting access to esoteric traditions predating the Bible. When King Philip IV moved against them, he didn't just seize their wealth. He ordered all Templar manuscripts burned, a detail often overshadowed by the dramatic executions. What survives tells a tantalizing story. Before his arrest, Grand Master Jacques de Molay allegedly smuggled key documents to Scotland, where they later inspired the rise of Freemasonry. Templar-connected families like the Sinclairs became guardians of bizarre artifacts, including the now missing Rosslyn Cube, a carved stone block covered in symbols matching no known language. Most compelling are the Templar graves excavated in the 1990s, where knights were buried with their swords arranged in precise geometric patterns mirroring constellations. These weren't random placements. They formed a star map pointing to something or somewhere the Order considered sacred. The greatest tragedy isn't that the Templars were destroyed, but that their discoveries might have reshaped the world centuries earlier. Imagine if their rumored findings, whether ancient energy technologies, suppressed gospels, or astronomical secrets, had entered mainstream thought instead of being stamped out. Would the Renaissance have come sooner? Might the scientific revolution have bypassed the Dark Ages entirely? The Templars' real legacy isn't their gold or their myths. It's the haunting possibility that history's most pivotal breakthroughs were within reach, only to be buried under accusations of heresy. And that raises an even darker question. How many other truth seekers have shared their fate? High above our planet, hidden in the silent darkness of space, an object drifts in polar orbit, moving in the opposite direction of every modern satellite. They call it the Black Knight, and if the legends are true, it's been watching us for over 13,000 years. First detected in 1954 by newspapers reporting strange radar echoes, then again in 1960 by ham radio operators who intercepted mysterious signals. This enigmatic structure defies all conventional explanations. NASA dismisses it as space debris, but the evidence tells a far stranger story. Photographs allegedly leaked from agency archives show a sleek, asymmetrical object with no visible propulsion, its surface etched with markings that resemble no known human script. Even more unsettling, ancient cultures from the Sumerians to the Dogon described watchers in the sky, celestial guardians who recorded human history. Could the Black Knight be one of them? The mystery deepens when you examine its orbit. Unlike human-made satellites that follow predictable paths, the Black Knight moves erratically, sometimes vanishing for decades before reappearing without warning. Astronomers tracking it in the 1990s claimed it emitted low-frequency radio waves matching patterns recorded in the 1920s by Nikola Tesla, who believed he'd intercepted signals from an extraterrestrial intelligence. Then there's the infamous 1998 Space Shuttle Endeavour footage, where astronauts briefly filmed a dark, angular object hovering near Earth, a clipped NAS, later attributed to thermal blanket debris, despite its clearly defined structure. The contradictions pile up. If it's just space junk, why has no nation claimed it? Why do declassified documents from multiple countries reference anomalous orbital bodies with redacted details? What makes the Black Knight truly forbidden isn't just its existence, but the pattern of suppression surrounding it. When amateur astronomers successfully tracked its position in 2012, their findings were abruptly removed from public databases. Former defense contractor employees have come forward with claims that the object was studied under black budget programs, its technology reverse engineered in secret facilities. One whistleblower even described metallic fragments recovered from its orbit materials, exhibiting isotopic ratios impossible to replicate naturally on Earth. The most chilling theory, that it's not merely observing but waiting. Ancient astronaut researchers point to carvings in Mesopotamian ziggurats depicting a winged disk hovering near Earth, its description eerily matching modern accounts of the Black Knight. The real scandal here isn't whether an alien probe orbits our planet. It's the systematic effort to gaslight anyone who questions the official narrative. When mainstream science can't explain something, the default response isn't curiosity but ridicule. Yet the questions remain. Why would 13 governments simultaneously classify reports of the same orbital anomaly? What are they afraid we'll discover if we look too closely? The Black Knight represents more than a UFO. It's a litmus test for humanity's willingness to confront the possibility that we're not the first intelligence to reach for the stars. And if that truth is being hidden, the next forbidden myth suggests the cover-up runs deeper than we ever imagined. Nikola Tesla's laboratory was a storm of sparks and shadows on the night federal agents arrived. It was January 1943, just days after the eccentric genius's death, and the Office of Alien Property had orders to seize everything, every notebook, every prototype, even the contents of his safe. Officially, this was about wartime security. Unofficially, it was the final act in a decades-long campaign to erase Tesla's most dangerous ideas from history. Because what the Serbian-American inventor had achieved wasn't just revolutionary, it threatened to dismantle the entire economic order of the 20th century. His vision, a world powered by free, wireless electricity, where energy flowed through the air like radio waves, untethered from power lines, oil barons, or meter readers. The scale of Tesla's suppressed breakthroughs would reshape modern physics if fully acknowledged. In 1899, at his Colorado Springs lab, he generated artificial lightning bolts over 100 feet long, discharges so powerful they accidentally blacked out the local power grid. Witnesses reported seeing strange blue halos around his equipment, a phenomenon modern researchers now recognize as evidence of scalar waves, a theoretical form of energy transmission that bypasses conventional electromagnetic limits. But his crowning achievement was Wardenclyffe Tower, a 187-foot spiraling antenna on Long Island designed to broadcast power globally without wires. When financier J.P. Morgan, who'd initially funded the project, realized Tesla's system couldn't be metered or monopolized, he withdrew support. Within months, the tower was demolished for scrap. The cover-up didn't stop there. After Tesla's death, his papers were classified as top secret by the FBI, despite containing no military applications. Among the missing documents were schematics for a particle beam weapon he'd offered to the U.S. military for defense, a concept later echoed in Reagan's Star Wars program. Even more explosive were his notes on dynamic gravity theory, which allegedly described a method of manipulating gravitational fields. When these files were finally declassified in 2016, key pages were mysteriously redacted. Former Pentagon officials have since admitted in interviews that Tesla's ideas formed the basis for classified aerospace research throughout the Cold War. What makes Tesla's story uniquely chilling isn't just the suppression, it's the pattern. Every few decades, another inventor claims to have rediscovered his principles, only to meet suspicious resistance. In the 1980s, Canadian engineer John Hutchison replicated Tesla's experiments, producing anti-gravity effects and spontaneous metal fracturing. His lab was raided by authorities citing safety violations, and his equipment confiscated. More recently, a European research team published papers on wireless power transfer using Tesla-like resonant frequencies. Their funding was abruptly cut, and their findings disappeared from academic databases. The message is clear: some truths remain forbidden not because they're impossible, but because they disrupt the systems that depend on our ignorance. The greatest tragedy of Tesla's legacy isn't the stolen patents or the demolished tower. It's the parallel universe of technology we might have inherited. Imagine cities free of smog, nations unshackled from energy wars, medical breakthroughs powered by resonant frequency therapies. That world was within reach. Instead, we're left with fragments, a name on an electric car, a unit of magnetic measurement, and the haunting question: What other geniuses have been silenced, their inventions buried before they could change everything? The answer leads us to the next forbidden myth, where another brilliant mind paid the ultimate price for revealing too much. The Great Pyramid of Giza has stood for over 4,500 years as a monument to human ingenuity, yet beneath its weathered limestone casing lies a mystery modern technology still can't fully unravel. In 2017, a team of scientists using advanced muon tomography, a scanning technique that detects density variations in stone, announced the discovery of a massive, previously unknown void above the Grand Gallery. Stretching nearly 100 feet long, this hidden chamber wasn't on any ancient blueprint. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. When researchers requested permission to drill a tiny camera port to investigate, Egyptian authorities abruptly shut down the project. The official explanation cited preservation concerns, but insiders whisper of a far more unsettling reason, that what lies inside isn't just an empty space, but something that could rewrite history. Consider the pyramid's mathematical perfection. Its base aligns with true north within a fraction of a degree. Its dimensions encode the Earth's circumference, and its inner shafts point precisely to key stars as they appeared in 2550 before Christ. These aren't random feats, they're evidence of knowledge we've barely begun to comprehend. Now imagine what might be concealed in those uncharted chambers. Ancient texts like the Arab historian Al-Makrizi's accounts describe secret rooms beneath the pyramid containing instruments of strange metal and tablets inscribed with lost sciences. Even more provocative are 19th century reports from British explorer Colonel Vyse, who claimed to have found hidden compartments filled with hieroglyphs matching no known Egyptian script records later dismissed as forgeries, though no modern scholar has been allowed to re-examine the evidence. The resistance to further exploration follows a troubling pattern. In 2021, a Japanese-Egyptian team using ground-penetrating radar identified another potential chamber beneath the pyramid's foundation. Days after their findings went public, their research permit was revoked without explanation. Similar fates have befallen other attempts like the UPUOut project's robotic exploration of the air shafts in 1993, which was halted after discovering a small limestone door with copper handles. That door remains unopened to this day. The message is clear: some secrets are meant to stay buried. What could be so dangerous about a 4,000-year-old relic? The answer might lie in what the pyramid represents: not just a tomb, but a repository. If those chambers contain artifacts proving the ancient Egyptians inherited knowledge from a far older civilization, or worse, proof of technologies that defy conventional timelines, it would upend our entire understanding of human progress. The real scandal isn't the existence of hidden rooms, it's the lengths to which certain institutions will go to keep them sealed. And that brings us to the next archaeological taboo, where another excavation was stopped not by governments, but by something far more unsettling. Alchemy wasn't just about turning lead into gold. It was a forbidden science so dangerous, kings and popes ordered its practitioners burned at the stake. Behind the cryptic symbols and smoky laboratories lay a pursuit far more radical than material transformation: the quest to unlock the secrets of creation itself. Medieval alchemists didn't merely seek to make precious metals, they believed nature held a hidden blueprint, a divine formula that could elevate human consciousness, heal any disease, and even cheat death. And that's precisely why their work was systematically erased. Take the case of the legendary Hermes Trismegistus, the mythical father of alchemy whose emerald tablets we've already explored. His principle, as above, so below, wasn't just poetic mysticism. It hinted at a universe where the microcosm of human existence mirrored the macrocosm of the cosmos. Alchemists like Paracelsus and Nicola's Flamel expanded this idea, developing medicines from minerals and documenting spiritual transformations alongside chemical experiments. Flamel's alleged discovery of the Philosopher's Stone, said to grant eternal life, wasn't just superstition. It reflected a genuine belief that matter and spirit were intertwined. When the Church condemned these ideas as heresy, they weren't just attacking charlatans, they were silencing a bridge between science and the sacred. The suppression reached its peak during the Spanish Inquisition, when alchemical texts were seized and burned alongside their owners. But the most telling detail, many of these banned manuscripts contained precise recipes for substances like nitric acid and alcohol distillation, techniques later rebranded as legitimate chemistry once stripped of their spiritual context. This wasn't just persecution, it was the deliberate secularization of knowledge. Even Isaac Newton, often celebrated as the father of modern physics, secretly devoted more time to decoding alchemical manuscripts than to his work on gravity. His private journals reveal a man obsessed with uncovering what he called the subtle spirit that pervades all matter, a concept suspiciously absent from mainstream science textbooks. What made alchemy truly forbidden wasn't its failures, but its successes. Historical records from Prague's court under Emperor Rudolf II describe alchemists producing alloys with uncanny properties, metals that glowed without heat or resisted corrosion in ways modern metallurgy can't replicate. In China, Taoist alchemists' experiments with mercury and cinnabar led to early gunpowder, but also to elixirs that reportedly induced states of heightened awareness. These weren't random accidents, they were glimpses of a holistic science that viewed the universe as alive, interconnected, and ripe for transformation. The greatest tragedy of alchemy's erasure is what it cost human progress. While the Church dismissed it as magic, its practitioners were pioneering experimental methods, documenting reactions, and laying the groundwork for modern chemistry, just with a spiritual dimension we've since abandoned. Today, we're left with a fragmented science, one that excels at manipulating matter, but has forgotten how to ask why it matters. The next forbidden myth plunges us into even darker territory, where the line between ancient medicine and modern conspiracy becomes dangerously blurred. Freemasonry's origins are shrouded in more mystery than its iconic symbols: the square, the compass, the all-seeing eye. Officially, the fraternity traces its roots to medieval stonemason guilds, but whisper through the halls of any Masonic lodge, and you'll hear a far older story. Some initiates speak of a lineage stretching back to the builders of Solomon's Temple, to the mystery schools of Egypt, even to the survivors of a lost civilization that predates recorded history. Why would a society founded on brotherhood and charity guard its rituals with such fervor? Because woven into their ceremonies are threads of a knowledge so potent, it's been suppressed for centuries. Take the Masonic obsession with geometry and architecture. Their lodges are adorned with celestial charts and Fibonacci spirals, their rites steeped in the precise measurements of sacred structures like the Great Pyramid. This isn't just nostalgia for stonemasonry, it's the preservation of an ancient science. Manuscripts from the early 18th century, when Freemasonry first went public, describe initiation rites where candidates reenact the murder of the mythical architect Hiram Abiff, a tale echoing the deaths of truth-seekers like Hypatia and the Templars. The message is clear: guarding divine knowledge comes at a price. The connections to older traditions are too explicit to ignore. Masonic symbolism mirrors the iconography of the Eleusinian mysteries, where initiates drank kykeon to commune with the gods. Their apron ritual mirrors the Egyptian weighing of the heart ceremony from the Book of the Dead. Even their hierarchical degrees, apprentice, fellowcraft, master, parallel the three stages of alchemical transformation, Negrido, Albedo, Rubedo. These aren't coincidences, they're fragments of a puzzle deliberately assembled across millennia. When the Vatican banned Catholics from joining the Masons in 1738, it wasn't just about secrecy, it was about competing claims to hidden wisdom. The most explosive evidence lies in their lost archives. Before the French Revolution, Masonic libraries in Paris allegedly housed scrolls salvaged from Constantinople's fall, including works by the Neoplatonists and Hermeticists. Napoleon's troops reportedly looted these texts, only for them to vanish into private collections. In the 1920s, a Brazilian Freemason named Mario Rosso de Luna published decrypted Masonic ciphers pointing to a global blueprint shared by all ancient cultures, a theory later echoed by Jung's collective unconscious. The manuscript was quietly pulled from circulation after his sudden death. What makes Freemasonry truly forbidden isn't its secrecy, but what that secrecy protects. Their rituals are more than tradition, they're a living ark, carrying ideas too dangerous to entrust to history books. Whether that knowledge involves sacred geometry's power to manipulate reality, as some conspiracy theorists claim, or simply the radical idea that enlightenment belongs to anyone willing to seek it, the pattern holds. When truth challenges authority, it goes underground. And sometimes it wears an apron. Now consider this: if even the Masons, with their public charities and community halls, are hiding fragments of a lost science, what might lie buried with the next secret society we explore? The answer waits in the shadows, where history and heresy share the same locked door. In the misty valleys of medieval France, a quiet revolution was brewing, one that would end in flames and bloodshed. The Cathars, a Christian sect flourishing in the 12th and 13th centuries, weren't just heretics in the eyes of the Church. They were keepers of a knowledge so dangerous, an entire crusade was launched to erase them from history. Unlike mainstream Christianity, the Cathars rejected the material world as a corrupt illusion, preached the equality of souls regardless of gender, and believed in reincarnation, a cycle of rebirth until spiritual perfection was achieved. But their most explosive idea, that the God of the Old Testament wasn't the true divinity but a lesser, flawed creator, this wasn't just theological dissent, it was an existential threat to the medieval power structure. The Church's response was the Albigensian Crusade, a 20-year campaign of slaughter so brutal, modern historians describe it as the first genocide in European history. Entire cities were razed, their populations given a chilling choice: recant or burn. At the Siege of Béziers in 1209, when soldiers asked how to distinguish Cathars from faithful Catholics, the papal legate famously ordered, "Kill them all." God will know his own. Thousands perished, their libraries torched, their teachings reduced to ashes, but fragments survived, smuggled out by fleeing believers or hidden in the coded symbols of troubadour poetry. These remnants reveal a belief system far more radical than heresy. It was a direct challenge to the very concept of religious authority. What made the Cathars truly forbidden wasn't just their rejection of church doctrine, but their empowerment of everyday people. They had no priests, only perfects, men and women who lived austere lives as spiritual guides, teaching that divine connection required no intermediaries. Women held equal status, a notion so scandalous in medieval Europe that crusaders specifically targeted female perfects for execution. Their rituals, like the Consolamentum, bypassed sacraments entirely, offering direct spiritual liberation through simple ceremonies involving the Gospel of John. Imagine the threat this posed: a faith where salvation didn't require tithes, confession, or even churches, just personal purity and knowledge. The most haunting clues to their suppressed wisdom lie in the ruins of Montségur, their last mountain fortress. When the Inquisition finally breached its walls in 1244, witnesses reported that 4 Cathars escaped under cover of darkness, carrying a treasure into the caves below. Not gold or jewels, but something far more precious, their sacred texts. Centuries later, occultists like Otto Rahn would search for these lost scrolls, convinced they contained esoteric secrets about the Holy Grail, which the Cathars allegedly reinterpreted not as a cup, but as a lineage of enlightened bloodlines. Nazi mystics later plundered these theories, twisting them into their own grotesque mythology. The Cathars' legacy isn't just a historical tragedy, it's a warning. Their extermination proved how far institutions will go to silence ideas that undermine their control. Yet echoes of their beliefs persist in Gnosticism's revival, in New Age spirituality, even in modern feminism's reclaiming of the divine feminine. The real heresy wasn't their theology, but their insistence that truth belongs to everyone, not just the gatekeepers of dogma, and that's precisely why they had to be erased. Now consider this: if a movement so thoroughly crushed still whispers through history, what other truths might be hiding in the cracks of the official record? The next forbidden myth takes us from the pyres of medieval France to the icy peaks of the Himalayas, where another suppressed tradition guards secrets even older than the Cathars. While Atlantis dominates discussions of lost continents, its Pacific counterpart, the sunken empire of Mu, remains shrouded in even deeper mystery. First proposed by 19th-century archaeologist Augustus Le Plongeon, who claimed to decipher Mayan texts describing a vast landmass swallowed by the Pacific, Mu was said to be the mother civilization that seeded ancient cultures from Egypt to Mesoamerica. But here's where the controversy ignites. Mainstream archaeology dismisses Mu as pure fantasy, yet indigenous traditions from Hawaii to Japan speak of a vanished homeland with eerie consistency. The Maori's Hawaiki, the Ryukyuan legends of Yamatai, even the oral histories of the Pacific's remote Nukuoro people, all describe a sophisticated island nation destroyed by cataclysm. Why would cultures separated by thousands of miles share nearly identical stories if there wasn't a kernel of truth buried beneath the waves? The most compelling evidence lies in the inexplicable. On the tiny Micronesian island of Pohnpei, the ruins of Nan Madol rise from the mangrove swamps, a labyrinth of 92 artificial islets built from basalt logs weighing up to 50 tons each. Local lore claims the city was constructed by skybringers from a sunken kingdom, using magic to levitate the stones. Modern engineers still can't explain how such massive blocks were transported without advanced machinery. Even more puzzling are the submerged structures off Japan's Yonaguni coast, terraced pyramids and perfect right-angle formations lying 60 feet underwater. Geologists argue these are natural formations, but the precision of the staircases and carved channels suggests human hands at work. If these are remnants of Mu, they hint at a civilization capable of feats we'd struggle to replicate today. The suppression of Mu's legacy follows a familiar pattern. When James Churchward, a British occultist, published his supposed translations of ancient Emerald Tablets in the 1920s, documents he claimed detailed Mu's advanced energy systems and aerial vehicles, academia ridiculed him. Yet Churchward wasn't entirely fabricating his sources. Spanish missionaries in the 1600s recorded Mayan priests speaking of the land of Kui in the Pacific, a place where ancestors wielded sun weapons and communicated across vast distances. These accounts were later locked away in Vatican archives, labeled as heathen superstitions. Similarly, when divers in the 1980s discovered what appeared to be paved roads near Bimini, a site plateau associated with Atlantis, scientists hastily declared them natural beach rock, despite the clearly arranged geometric patterns. What makes Mu truly forbidden isn't just its potential reality, but what its existence implies about human history. If a Pacific civilization did flourish 12,000 years ago, as some researchers suggest, its sinking would have triggered massive tsunamis, waves capable of reaching every coastal culture on Earth. Could this explain the flood myths found in over 200 disparate cultures? More unsettling is the possibility that Mu's survivors scattered their knowledge globally, jump-starting civilizations from the Andes to the Indus Valley. The parallels are too striking to ignore: pyramidal structures, sudden advances in agriculture, and star-aligned megaliths appearing simultaneously worldwide. The establishment dismisses these connections as coincidence, but the alternative, that history's timeline is fundamentally wrong, threatens the foundations of anthropology itself. Now, as sonar scans reveal more underwater anomalies across the Pacific, from the Marshall Islands to Easter Island's submerged platforms, the question isn't whether Mu existed. It's why we're so resistant to exploring what its ruins might tell us. Because if the next myth is any indication, the ocean isn't the only place where civilizations hide in plain sight. Buried beneath layers of dust in museum basements and sealed away in restricted archives, skeletal remains tell a story that challenges everything we think we know about human history. From the biblical Nephilim to Native American legends of towering warriors, nearly every ancient culture recounts encounters with giants, beings so colossal, their very existence defies modern anthropology. Yet when archaeologists uncover elongated skulls, femurs measuring over 4 feet, or jawbones that could fit over a modern man's face like a mask, these findings vanish from public view, dismissed as hoaxes or genetic anomalies. The question isn't just whether giants walked the earth, it's why the evidence keeps disappearing. Take the case of Lovelock Cave in Nevada, where in 1911, miners unearthed dozens of 7 to 8 foot tall skeletons with red hair, matching the Paiute tribe's oral history of the Cathar, a cannibalistic giant race they fought in ancient times. Newspaper reports from the era documented the discovery, complete with photographs of femurs twice the length of a typical adult's. Yet today, only a few fragments remain in a Humboldt County museum, labeled unverified. Similar stories echo globally. The 9-foot skeleton uncovered in Bulgaria's Black Sea coast in 2015, the Giant of Castelnau, discovered in France's Bronze Age tombs, its bones suggesting a being over 11 feet tall. In each instance, mainstream scholars attribute the remains to gigantism or photo manipulation, despite independent forensic analyses confirming their authenticity. The suppression isn't limited to bones. Ancient texts bristle with forbidden references. The Book of Enoch, banned by the early church, describes the Nephilim as hybrid offspring of the Watchers and human women, their skeletons left as warnings after the Great Flood. Greek myths speak of the Titans, while Hindu epics detail the Rakshasas, towering beings who built cyclopean cities. Even Columbus's logs mention the Carib tribe's tales of a neighboring island inhabited by giants, a claim later corroborated by the discovery of oversized stone tools in the Canary Islands. When tangible proof aligns so perfectly with global mythology, dismissing it as coincidence starts to feel less like science and more like willful ignorance. Perhaps the most chilling evidence comes from construction sites and oil fields, where workers routinely report finding and then being ordered to destroy massive skeletal remains. In Saudi Arabia's empty quarter, a petroleum crew in the 1960s allegedly uncovered a cemetery of 60-foot-long skeletons before military personnel sealed the area. Ecuadorian laborers digging near Cuenca in the 1960s stumbled upon a network of tunnels containing bones belonging to beings estimated at over 20 feet tall, only to have the site dynamited shut. The pattern is undeniable. Wherever giants are found, someone ensures they don't stay found. What makes this myth truly forbidden isn't the controversy, it's the implications. If giants existed, their sudden disappearance suggests a cataclysm or systematic extermination. Their presence in ancient artwork, like the 13-foot-tall carving of Goliath in a Canaanite temple or the oversized sarcophagi in Egypt's Serapeum, hints at a lost chapter where humans shared the world with another intelligent species. More unsettling, the recent genetic studies of Paracas skulls in Peru, which revealed DNA markers unknown in any human, primate, or animal database. Could these be the remnants of the giant's legacy, a biological truth too disruptive for our textbooks? The next time you hear a legend about giants, ask yourself, why does every culture remember them, yet no museum displays them? The answer lies not in the dirt, but in the hands of those who decide what history gets remembered and what gets buried. And as we'll see, their censorship extends far beyond bones, into realms where the line between myth and hidden history blurs beyond recognition. The moon hangs in our night sky, a silent witness to human history. But what if it's more than just a rocky satellite? Beneath its cratered surface lies a mystery so unsettling, even NASA's official missions seem to skirt around it. For centuries, cultures from the ancient Sumerians to the Zulu people have spoken of the moon arriving long after Earth's formation, brought here by unknown forces. Modern anomalies only deepen the enigma. Apollo astronauts reported strange seismic readings during their landings, vibrations that lasted far longer than any natural impact should, as if the moon rang like a bell. Scientists were baffled. On Earth, such reverberations would suggest a hollow structure, and then there's the matter of its composition. The moon's crust contains minerals like titanium and uranium in concentrations impossible to explain by natural formation, materials more suited to armor plating than cosmic debris. Look closer at the lunar surface, and the anomalies multiply. Satellite images reveal geometric structures that defy erosion patterns, perfectly straight lines stretching for miles, symmetrical domes, and what appear to be towering spires casting long shadows. The most infamous of these is the Shard, a jagged formation photographed during the Apollo missions, rising nearly 5 miles above the surface. NASA dismissed it as a trick of light, yet independent analysts using enhanced imaging insist its angles are too precise for natural geology. Even more provocative are the transcripts from Apollo 11's off-air communications, where astronauts allegedly described alien bases and artificial constructions before being ordered to switch to a secured channel. Whether these claims hold weight or not, the fact remains: no human has set foot on the moon in over 50 years, despite promises of a permanent lunar base. Theories about the moon's origins range from the scientifically plausible to the outright fantastical. Some astrophysicists argue it's a captured asteroid, yet its orbit is unnaturally circular, and its size disproportionately large for our planet, unlike any other moon in the solar system. More radical hypotheses suggest it's a constructed vessel, perhaps even an ancient observational outpost left by a civilization predating humanity. The late astronomer Carl Sagan himself mused that a hollow moon would be the ideal artifact for an extraterrestrial species to monitor Earth discreetly. If true, it would explain why every major power abruptly abandoned lunar exploration after the 1970s, despite the technological leaps that should have made return trips trivial. What makes this myth truly forbidden isn't just the unanswered questions, it's the active suppression of curiosity. When researchers like Richard Hoagland began analyzing NASA's own images for anomalies, they were labeled conspiracy theorists, their findings excluded from academic journals. Lunar meteorites containing exotic alloys vanish into private collections. Even civilian attempts to probe the moon's mysteries, like the Google Lunar X Prize, were quietly discontinued despite promising breakthroughs. The message is clear: some truths, whether about the moon's hollow core or the unnatural structures dotting its surface, remain off-limits. Perhaps the most chilling clue lies in the ancient texts. The Dogon Tribe, with their inexplicable knowledge of Sirius, also spoke of a time before the moon existed, a claim echoed by Greek philosophers like Anaxagoras, who wrote of a celestial body brought into orbit. If these fragments of memory are accurate, the moon isn't just a silent companion. It's a locked door, and someone or something has gone to great lengths to keep us from turning the key. The next myth pulls us deeper into the cosmos, where another celestial body hides secrets even more explosive: Antarctica, the most forbidden continent on Earth. Beneath its 2-mile thick ice sheets lie secrets so explosive, access is controlled by military checkpoints and scientific research is filtered through government gatekeepers. But long before the Antarctic Treaty sealed the landmass in bureaucratic silence, ancient maps told a different story. The Pirry Rise Map we explored earlier isn't the only one. Medieval portolan charts like the Orontius Phineus of 1531 depict Antarctica's coastline with shocking accuracy, not as a frozen wasteland, but as a landmass free of ice, crisscrossed with rivers and mountain ranges that match modern subglacial scan. How could cartographers from 500 years ago know what lay beneath ice that's been there for at least 12,000 years? The answer might lie in fragments of a forgotten civilization's knowledge, preserved against all odds. Recent satellite surveys have only deepened the enigma. In 2016, researchers using NASA's Operation Icebridge radar discovered 3 massive, pyramid-like structures near the Shackleton Range, their symmetrical angles and alignment defying natural erosion. Mainstream geologists insist they're non-attacks wind-carved ridges, yet the precision of their geometry echoes the Great Pyramid's base to a disturbing degree. Even more provocative are the thermal scans of the Antarctic interior, which reveal vast, grid-like patterns under the ice, patterns that mirror the street plans of ancient Mesopotamian cities. When a team of Russian scientists drilled into Lake Vostok in 2012, they retrieved water samples containing microbial DNA sequences unlike anything in known databases. The samples were promptly confiscated by government officials, and the lead researcher was reassigned. The suppression isn't just scientific, it's logistical. Travel to Antarctica requires military-grade permits, and civilian flights are banned from overflying key regions. In 2018, a group of journalists investigating reports of a massive, metallic anomaly detected by ground-penetrating radar near the South Pole were denied visas without explanation. Even Google Earth's images of the continent are riddled with suspicious blackouts and distortions, particularly around the areas where these anomalies cluster. The few archaeologists granted access to Antarctica's dry valleys, regions where the ice has retreated, describe finding fossilized palm fronds and petrified wood, remnants of a time when the continent hosted tropical forests. But their reports are buried in obscure journals, their implications ignored. The most chilling clues come from the continent's ice cores. Layers corresponding to 12,000 years ago show a sudden, catastrophic spike in platinum, evidence of a comet or asteroid impact that aligns with Plato's account of Atlantis's fall. Zulu legends speak of a great fire from the sky that forced their ancestors to flee underground, while Maori oral histories describe the long winter when the southern lands were swallowed by ice. These aren't isolated myths, they're pieces of a global memory, one that suggests Antarctica wasn't always a frozen graveyard. Why does this matter? Because if even a fraction of these anomalies point to a lost civilization, it means human history, or something far older, isn't just buried in dust but locked in ice. And the frantic efforts to keep Antarctica's secrets suggest someone, somewhere, knows exactly what's down there. The question isn't whether we'll uncover the truth, but whether we'll be allowed to remember it. The pyramids of Giza and the stepped temples of Teotihuacan stand separated by an ocean, yet their uncanny resemblance, down to precise astronomical alignments and near-identical construction techniques, whispers of a connection archaeology refuses to acknowledge. How could two civilizations, supposedly isolated by thousands of miles and centuries, build monuments mirroring each other with mathematical precision? The answer lies in a forbidden chapter of history, transoceanic contact between ancient Egypt and the Americas, a truth so disruptive it's been systematically erased from textbooks. Consider the evidence etched in stone. The Great Pyramid and Mexico's Pyramid of the Sun both align with the constellation Orion's belt, their layouts replicating celestial patterns with an accuracy that defies coincidence. Both cultures used identical corbelled archways, a complex architectural technique rare in other ancient societies. Even their religious symbols overlap. The Egyptian winged sun disk finds its twin in Mayan carvings of the feathered serpent Kukulkan, both representing divine knowledge descending from the heavens. When Spanish conquistadors first saw Aztec temples, they remarked in shock how closely they resembled Egyptian designs, an observation later censored from official reports. The smoking gun, tobacco and cocaine in mummies. In 1976, German toxicologist Dr. Svetla Balabanova made a discovery that should have rewritten history: traces of nicotine and coca metabolites in the hair and tissues of Egyptian mummies, including Ramses the Great. These plants were thought to exist only in the Americas until after Columbus. The scientific community's response: they accused her of contamination despite her airtight methodology. Later studies confirmed her findings, yet the implications that Egyptians sailed to the New World or vice versa were buried under academic ridicule. The suppression isn't just about pride, it's about power. Admitting pre-Columbian contact shatters the Eurocentric narrative of a primitive Americas waiting for European discovery. It forces us to confront indigenous oral histories like the Cherokee's tale of pale visitors from the east, or the Olmec stone heads with distinctly African features. Even the Popol Vuh, the sacred Mayan text, describes bearded gods arriving by sea, bringing advanced knowledge, a story eerily similar to Egyptian accounts of the god Thoth crossing waters to civilized distant lands. The most damning clues lie in the artifacts that vanished. In the 1930s, explorer Philip Means documented hundreds of Tiahuanaco statues in Bolivia wearing headdresses identical to those of pharaohs, complete with urious serpents. The statues were destroyed by local authorities within a decade. Similarly, a cache of Egyptian-style scarabs found in a Texas cave in the 1940s disappeared from a university archive. The pattern is undeniable. Evidence of contact is either dismissed as hoax or disappears entirely. What makes this myth truly forbidden isn't the academic debate, it's the cultural reckoning it demands. If ancient Egyptians or their contemporaries crossed the Atlantic, it means indigenous Americans were part of a global network millennia before Europe's rise. It means our maps of human migration are incomplete, our timelines flawed. Perhaps that's why the next forbidden connection we'll explore was hidden even more ruthlessly, because it doesn't just link civilizations, it reveals a shared legacy too revolutionary to acknowledge. The Maya weren't just stargazers, they were timekeepers on a cosmic scale. Their calendars so precise they could predict eclipses thousands of years into the future with pinpoint accuracy. Yet when Spanish conquistador Diego de Landa arrived in the 16th century, he ordered the burning of every Maya codex he could find, reducing centuries of astronomical observations, medical knowledge, and spiritual teachings to ash. Only 4 fragile bark paper books survived the flames, but what they contain, and what was lost, hints at a wisdom so advanced, it threatened the very foundations of colonial power. Take the Dresden Codex, one of the surviving texts. At first glance, its pages are a labyrinth of intricate glyphs and serpentine numerals, but modern scholars have decoded sections revealing sophisticated astronomical tables tracking Venus's cycles with an error margin of just 2 hours per 500 years. These aren't primitive scratchings, they're mathematical masterpieces, rivaling the computations of modern supercomputers. Even more startling are the Codex's prophecies, which describe celestial events like solar storms and comet impacts with eerie specificity. One passage, dated to correspond with the year 2012, detailed a great alignment that would herald a shift in cosmic cycles, a prediction later linked to real solar maximum activity that disrupted satellites worldwide. How could a civilization without telescopes foresee such phenomena? The answer might lie in the thousands of texts that didn't survive. De Landa's auto-da-fe wasn't just religious zealotry, it was strategic erasure. Among the burned manuscripts were reportedly guides to plant-based medicines that could cure infections centuries before penicillin, architectural schematics for acoustically perfect temples that amplified whispers into echoes, and star charts referencing celestial objects invisible to the naked eye. Friar Bartolomé de las Casas, one of the few clerics who opposed the destruction, later wrote that the Maya measured the movement of the heavens as easily as we count coins, suggesting their astronomy extended far beyond the fragments we've recovered. The parallels to other forbidden myths are impossible to ignore, like the Antikythera Mechanism or the Baghdad Battery. The Mayas' achievements suggest a scientific lineage that doesn't fit neatly into humanity's supposed linear progress. The most haunting clue to their suppressed knowledge lies in their sudden collapse. By the 9th century, Maya cities like Tikal and Palenque were abandoned, their populations vanishing almost overnight. Mainstream theories blame drought or warfare, but recent LiDAR scans of the Guatemalan jungle reveal something far stranger. Vast networks of elevated highways, hydraulic systems capable of redirecting entire rivers, and pyramidal complexes aligned to celestial events we've only recently rediscovered. These weren't the ruins of a declining society. They were the skeleton of a civilization operating at a level of sophistication we're still struggling to comprehend. Even more provocative are the inscriptions at sites like Tonina, which reference the coming of the Lords of Time and the Great Forgetting, as if their collapse wasn't an accident, but a planned withdrawal from a world no longer ready for their wisdom. Why does this myth remain forbidden? Because it forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. The Maya might not have disappeared at all. Their descendants still live across Central America, guarding oral traditions that speak of a time when their ancestors walked with the stars. In remote villages, healers use plant remedies matching descriptions from the burned codices, while elders recite calendrical formulas passed down through generations, formulas that still predict weather patterns more accurately than modern meteorology. The real scandal isn't that the Maya were destroyed, but that their surviving knowledge continues to be dismissed as folklore, even as it outshines our own science. The next myth plunges us into even darker territory, where another civilization's legacy was erased not by fire, but by sheer geological force, a cataclysm so violent it left only whispers in the bedrock. Buried in the Sanskrit epics of ancient India lies a technology so advanced it mirrors the aerospace dreams of the modern era, the Vimanas. These weren't just mythical chariots of the gods. They were meticulously described flying machines, complete with propulsion systems, aerial combat tactics, and even anti-gravity mechanisms. The Mahabharata, dating back over 2,000 years, recounts battles where Vimanas rained fire from the sky, unleashing weapons that could reduce entire cities to ashes, descriptions chillingly reminiscent of modern thermonuclear blasts. But here's what's rarely acknowledged. These texts don't read like fantasy. They're technical manuals. Chapter after chapter details construction materials, energy sources like mercury-based engines, and even pilot training protocols. So why is this ancient science dismissed as allegory when it bears uncanny parallels to cutting-edge aerospace engineering? Take the Samrangana Sutradhara, an 11th century text that dedicates 230 verses to Vimana mechanics. It describes mercury-filled vortex engines, gyroscopic stabilization, and aerial routes mapped by celestial navigation. In 1991, researchers at the Indian Institute of Science built a scaled-down model based on these descriptions, and it demonstrated lift principles consistent with modern fluid dynamics. Even more startling are the accounts from the Drona Parva, where Vimanas deploy weapons called astras that release blazing circles of fire and induce mass hallucinations in enemy troops. Compare this to today's directed energy weapons and psychological warfare tech, and the line between myth and suppressed history blurs beyond recognition. The suppression of Vimana knowledge follows a familiar pattern. When British colonialists encountered these texts in the 18th century, they dismissed them as primitive superstitions, despite Indian astronomers using the same documents to predict planetary motions with startling accuracy. Later, in the 1970s, a Chinese archaeologist claimed to have found mercury residue in Tibetan caves, matching Vimana engine descriptions, a discovery that vanished from academic discourse after his sudden recall to Beijing. Even now, attempts to study these texts as more than mythology face institutional resistance. Why? Because accepting that ancient cultures might have grasped or even surpassed modern physics undermines the linear narrative of human progress. The most compelling evidence isn't just in the texts, it's in the artifacts. In 1895, a group of laborers digging near Pithapuram, India, unearthed a strange metallic disc etched with spiral hieroglyphs. When struck, it emitted a low-frequency hum that caused nearby animals to panic. Local priests identified it as a Vimana fragment and hid it in a temple vault. By the time British officials investigated, the artifact had mysteriously disappeared. Similar accounts surfaced globally. The Saqqara bird, an Egyptian wooden model with aerodynamic properties impossible for its era. The Tolima fighter jet pendants from Colombia resembling delta-wing aircraft. These aren't isolated oddities, they're fragments of a forgotten technological lexicon. What makes the Vimana tradition truly forbidden isn't the lack of evidence, but the implications. If these machines existed, who built them? Were they the product of a lost civilization, or, as some Hindu scholars suggest, gifts from celestial beings? More unsettling, if the knowledge was deliberately erased, was it to prevent us from rediscovering power sources or weapons too dangerous for the modern world? The answer might lie in the next myth, where another ancient culture's innovations were buried not by time, but by design. The shadows of history are filled with whispered names, groups whose influence supposedly shaped the world from behind velvet curtains and locked doors. But few names stir as much intrigue and misinformation as the Illuminati. Far from the cartoonish cabal of modern conspiracy theories, the original order of the Illuminati emerged in 1776 Bavaria as a radical Enlightenment-era think tank. Their stated mission: to free humanity from superstition and tyranny by infiltrating institutions with rational thought. Yet within a decade, they were outlawed, their records seized and burned by authorities terrified of their growing reach. But what if their true legacy wasn't in the power they wielded, but in the knowledge they sought to suppress or protect? At their peak, the Illuminati counted some of Europe's brightest minds among their ranks, from progressive aristocrats to pioneering scientists. Their private correspondence, later uncovered in raids, reveals a startling agenda, compiling a universal encyclopedia of forbidden knowledge. This wasn't just a collection of banned books. It was a meticulous index of everything from alchemical formulas and hermetic rituals to suppressed inventions and pre-Christian histories. One seized document, the so-called Weishaupt Codex, allegedly contained instructions for locating hidden vaults beneath Vienna said to house artifacts from Solomon's temple, including a mirror that reveals past and future. Whether these vaults existed matters less than the pattern they expose, a relentless pursuit of truths deemed too dangerous for public consumption. The irony is thick. A society founded to dismantle secrecy became history's most infamous secret. After their dissolution, their surviving members scattered, seeding their ideals into Masonic lodges, scientific societies, and even early revolutionary movements. Thomas Jefferson praised their vision while Goethe wove their symbolism into his works, yet their real impact might lie in what they left behind, clues to a puzzle few dare to assemble. In 1953, a librarian at the University of Ingolstadt uncovered a cache of encrypted Illuminati papers hidden inside a hollowed-out Bible. Decrypted passages referenced the key beneath Rome and the silent watchers in the desert, phrases that later appeared verbatim in the journals of Nikola Tesla and Aleister Crowley. Coincidence or evidence of a thread connecting disparate seekers across centuries, modern dismissals of the Illuminati as a boogeyman miss the point. Whether they survived as an organization is irrelevant next to the more unsettling question: what happened to the archives they compiled? Bavarian court records note that only a fraction of their documents were recovered before their headquarters were torched. The rest, including rumored blueprints for energy systems rivaling Tesla's and translations of the lost Emerald Tablets, vanished into private collections or the Vatican's sealed archives. Even today, declassified CIA files from the Cold War reference Illuminati-linked materials recovered from Nazi bunkers describing devices capable of influencing human perception at a distance. These reports were promptly classified under national security pretexts, leaving us to wonder, was the Illuminati's true crime not conspiring to rule the world, but discovering truths about human potential that someone then and now desperately wants buried? This pattern of suppression doesn't end with the Illuminati. It echoes through every shadowy group we've explored, from the Templars to the Cathars. The real conspiracy isn't about who controls governments or banks, it's about who controls what we're allowed to remember. And as we peel back the final layer of these forbidden myths, the most shocking revelation isn't the existence of hidden knowledge, but the lengths to which power will go to keep it hidden. The last myth on our list doesn't just challenge history, it threatens to unravel the very fabric of reality as we know it. Imagine a world where entire libraries are reduced to ashes not by accident, but by decree, where the guardians of knowledge become its executioners. The 28th and final forbidden myth isn't about a single lost text, but the systematic annihilation of ideas that dared to challenge the narratives of power. From Rome's Sibylline oracles, burned by Augustus to erase prophecies he couldn't control, to the Book of Enoch, excised from the Bible for detailing fallen angels and celestial secrets, these banned books share a haunting common thread. They revealed truths too disruptive for the institutions of their time. Their suppression wasn't just censorship, it was a battle for the very soul of human understanding. Take the Sibylline oracles once housed in Rome's Temple of Jupiter. These prophetic scrolls, allegedly purchased from a mysterious Sibyl in the 6th century before Christ, were consulted in times of crisis for visions of Rome's destiny. But when Augustus seized power, he ordered their destruction, preserving only fragments that aligned with his imperial agenda. Why? Because the originals reportedly foretold the fall of empires, the rise of messianic figures, and cycles of destruction that undermined the myth of Rome's eternal reign. Similar fates befell the Gnostic Gospels, the Mayan codices, and the Vedic texts of the Indus Valley, each erased not for being false, but for offering alternative visions of history, divinity, and human potential. The Book of Enoch stands as a stark example. Banned by the early church for its vivid accounts of the Watcher's angelic beings who taught humanity forbidden arts, it survived only in Ethiopia, tucked away in the Ark of the Covenant's shadow. Enoch's descriptions of advanced astronomy, genetic manipulation, and interdimensional travel read like science fiction, yet they echo in the forbidden myths we've explored. The Dogon Sirius lore, the Vimanas flight manuals, even the Emerald Tablets' alchemical secrets. These parallels suggest a hidden current of knowledge, flowing through time only to be dammed up by those fearing its power. But here's the pattern that binds them all. The texts targeted for destruction weren't just radical, they were emancipatory. The Gnostic Gospels empowered individuals to seek divinity within. The Sibylline oracles revealed history's cyclical nature, undermining the permanence of rulers. The Mayan codices predicted cosmic shifts that rendered human authority fleeting. Every burned book, every shattered tablet carried the same dangerous message: truth isn't owned by kings, priests, or empires. It's a shared inheritance waiting to be reclaimed. As we close this journey through forbidden myths, the real question isn't just what was lost, it's what survives in the margins. Fragments persist, a quote preserved by a monk's marginalia, a ritual encoded in folk dances, a star chart hidden in cathedral designs. These whispers remind us that knowledge, once awakened, can never be fully extinguished. The greatest myth of all might be the lie that history is fixed, that the past is settled. But as these 28 stories prove, the past is a battleground, and the truth is still out there, waiting for those bold enough to seek it. These 28 forbidden myths aren't just scattered anomalies, they're pieces of a puzzle, forming a picture history's gatekeepers never wanted assembled. From the Library of Alexandria's ashes to the Vatican's locked vaults, from Tesla's confiscated notebooks to the Maya's burned codices, one truth echoes across millennia: knowledge isn't lost by accident. It's removed deliberately, systematically, because every myth we've uncovered shares a dangerous common thread: they all empower. Whether revealing humanity's forgotten technological heights, exposing the cyclical nature of power, or proving spiritual enlightenment requires no intermediaries, these truths share one fatal flaw in the eyes of authority: they make people unstoppable. Think about what happens when a society remembers its potential. The Baghdad Battery hints we mastered electricity millennia before Edison. The Antikythera Mechanism proves complex machinery predated the Renaissance by 1500 years. The Dogon's serious knowledge suggests ancient cultures accessed astronomical data without telescopes. Imagine the revolutions that could have been, should have been, if these ideas had flourished instead of being buried. That's the real crime here, not just the suppression, but the stolen futures. The medical breakthroughs, the energy solutions, the spiritual awakenings, all delayed because someone decided truth was too dangerous in the wrong hands. Yet here's the paradox they never anticipated: the harder you try to erase something, the brighter it burns in collective memory. The Gnostic Gospels resurfaced in Nag Hammadi. The Cathar's ideals live on in mystic traditions. Tesla's scattered papers still inspire fringe researchers to chase wireless energy. These myths weren't silenced. They went underground, passed hand to hand like contraband through the ages. That's why we're having this conversation now, because no amount of book burnings, no force of ridicule, no weight of institutional denial can permanently extinguish what resonates with human curiosity. So where does that leave us? At a crossroads. You've now glimpsed the gaps in the official story, the cracks where the light gets in. The real question isn't whether these forbidden myths are true, it's what you'll do with the possibility that they might be. Will you file them away as entertaining stories, or will you let them unsettle the comfortable narratives you've been fed? Because that's always been the end game of suppression. Not just to hide truths, but to make us forget we should be looking for them in the first place. The most subversive act isn't uncovering secrets, it's daring to ask what else when the answers make institutions squirm. It's recognizing that history isn't a static record, but a living argument, one we're all invited to join. So go dig deeper, question wider, connect the dots between these 28 myths and the anomalies in your own world, because the greatest revelation isn't in the past. It's in what happens next when enough people start demanding the unedited version of our story. Your turn. The comments are open, the subscription buttons below, and the next revelation. Well, that's waiting just around the corner.